Hello there, and welcome back to our API development live session. So, I guess it will be an interesting day today because my plan is to start actually implementing authentication and authorization, of course, with JSON Web Tokens. And yeah, we'll have to actually start from scratch doing that. We'll have to probably revisit a lot of the stuff that we have right here. So yeah, we have plenty of work to do. But how are you? How's your week? Is everything okay? Can you hear me? And see the screen, of course. Okay. Good morning from California. Good morning. Thank you very much for tuning in. How's the weather in California right now? I was planning this night to maybe watch an NBA game, but it's late actually here in Romania. So I'm not sure if I will be able to make it. But yeah, we'll see. I guess Atlanta Hawks is playing at Lakers in Los Angeles, I guess. That was the one that I was thinking about. So, before we get rolling, I just want to show you something here. So, that's the GitHub repository for this branch, for this project. And what I wanted to actually show you is that if we look at the contributors, I'm not the only one anymore. And I'm really glad that somebody of you, I'm not sure if that person is watching right now, but somebody just, well, took ownership and did something. And we have here the pull request. It's already closed. And it was, basically it was a refactoring for the usings, because in starting with C#10 we can use actually this global using, so we can have actually all the usings in one file instead of having everything right at the top of each file. And yeah, that's basically what it did. And yeah, I'm glad actually that somebody did that. We'll have to be careful right now to maybe just also add new usings directly into the global usings if needed. But yeah, that's mostly it. So this is one more very important thing that I would like to say. There are here also two issues that I have opened. There are, well, it actually, both of them are for adding some new functionality. One of them is for post interactions, and both of them actually follow or can follow, or you can take as an example what we did with the comments. And then the other one is the post comment. I'm not sure right now which of these we actually did implement. So yeah, let's just have a look at that. But once again, the idea is that and if you see things that you would think that need to be added here, just add your issues, and then you can commit a work and submit a pull request. I also have added here some GitHub actions for building and restoring things and making sure that everything works when we actually want to submit a pull request. And yeah, I guess we are pretty much set up. This GitHub action also contains I'm not sure why we can't see that. I guess we should go to the workflow file for that. That's here. It also contains this test, but right now we don't have any unit tests, but soon enough we'll add also some unit tests to that. So yeah, that's basically what I wanted to show you. Just feel free, if you think that you would like to do anything with this API, just feel free to take one of the user stories. If you want to do something else that or besides what it is actually described in user stories, please feel free first of all to open an issue before you start working, because that's also a good way for me to actually see and understand that somebody's doing something. And in that case, I can make sure that there are not two persons or well, working actually on the same thing at the same time. And also, when you start working on an issue that already exists, please also feel free. I'm not sure if this is possible, but maybe at least just leave a comment. If you can assign it to yourself, then just do that. But if not, then just leave a comment here so that we know that hey, somebody's working on that specific issue. So that would be really cool if we can pull that off. And yeah, that's basically it. I'm really very happy that somebody actually contributed. And even though I'm not sure exactly if that person is watching right now, I just want to say a huge thank you for taking the initiative and doing that. I really appreciate this very much, because as said, I really hope that this project will become a community-driven project that will allow all of us to learn something. So I guess if you don't know exactly, because let's face it, even if you work as a developer, because I include here also myself, it's not every day that we can get to do this type of stuff. Like for instance, what I'm working right now for the customer is a regular ASP.NET Core MVC application with Kendo UI, and most of the things are fairly basic. The complexity in the project that I'm currently in is, well, resides in the fact there are a lot of different applications that needs to be rewritten to some more modern and, well, according to the customer, ASP.NET Core MVC is modern. So yeah, that's pretty much it. So it's not every day that we get to work actually on something like that. And as said, I really want and try to do my best to actually keep this project, this API, as if it was a real production application. So I guess it's also a possibility for each of us to learn something from it. So if you just want to practice your coding or some new concepts, because once again, not every day we get to work with CQRS or similar stuff, you can totally do that. Take this opportunity and just work here on something, and that would be it, I guess. Okay, good. This being said, let's look a little bit into what we would have to do today, because as said, we want to add authentication, and let me just run the application. Actually, we'll also lay the foundation for real authorization, although we will probably still not be able to, well, create some authorization policies, because to be honest, I'm not sure exactly yet what such policies could we add. But it will be the foundation that we could use further for that. Now, the idea is that we would have to do two things just to set everything up. So the first thing that we would have to do is, of course, well, implementing or setting up all the services that we need for authentication. And this is what we will do in the MVC register most probably. But then the other thing is we have also to, well, to instruct Swagger how to actually work with our authentication setup. So that's then the second part that we would have to think about. And there will be some 9 things here, for instance, a button that we can click and to actually provide a token after we get it. And then we have to implement itself the idea of registering users and login, which would be, well, very important, because through registering or login, we will actually get an authentication token that we can then subsequently use for all the requests. Then most probably we'll have to also revisit a little bit this user profile endpoints, because we won't need this post, so, and probably also not delete, because the idea is that when a new user is registered, like a new identity user is registered, we should also create a user profile for that user. But the creation of user profile should be part of that flow, so it wouldn't be actually something that you could do separately, at least for now. And the delete, it should be the same. If we want, or if we delete a certain identity, then we might want, I guess, we'll think about it, also delete the user profile. But it's clear that we won't actually need this endpoint at all, because it should be part of it should be part of the process of registering a new user. So yeah, that's what we actually need to do right now. So let's maybe just get started. So the very first thing that I would like to do probably is go here in our app settings file, because first of all we will need to set here some things up. So this is the connection string object, so it should be probably outside the connection string object. And we'll have something like, what should we call this? JWT settings. That's how we'll call that. And that's actually an object that will contain different properties. And there are a bunch of things that we will need. Not a lot, but I guess 3 of them at least. We would need a signing key. Okay. Then I'll talk about the signing key just in a while. What is the problem here? Okay. Besides the signing key, we would need maybe an issuer to determine who is the issuer of the token. And also one other very important thing that we might need. Right now, this might not be very important, but if we start to build a UI for that, or if anybody starts to build a UI for that, actually this will be important because we actually need also a way to well define our audiences. So who can actually, or who are the intended users or consumers of this API. So let's name this audience, and this would actually be an array, a string array. And for now, maybe we just add Swagger UI, because that's where we actually will need that. Now, one very important thing here is the signing key. The signing key actually should be, I guess, 32 characters long. And I have generated such a string. The idea is that it needs to be exactly this long because of the hashing algorithms and, well, all the cryptography that happens behind the scenes when we actually do that. It actually needs to be exactly this size, otherwise it won't actually work. And our issuer would be the name of our API, so that would be what we need actually for the settings. And I guess that's all settings that we need, at least for now. Now, the next thing that we would need to do is we will need to also use the options pattern, because we will need to actually, well, read the settings from the configuration and bind them to a Poco object and make it available through dependency injection so that we can reuse that in our handlers, because we will need that in order to be able to read the signing key, the issuer, the audience. We would need to have the option to actually read that. We want to provide this through dependency injection following what is called the IOptions pattern in ASP.NET Core. But question is, where should we create this class that would actually hold these properties? In which project? Probably we would have two candidates for it, for this. So first of all, we could create it directly here in the API project, because we already have here an options folder where we have placed actually our configure Swagger options. And by the way, we will have to also edit this file today, because we will have to add things for Swagger to know exactly what authentication and authorization we are using. But we have already this folder. However, the idea is that, okay, we are reading these settings from the configuration, but that's actually part of an application workflow. The idea of logging in and authorizing, and how do we actually want to be able to log in users, that's clearly an application flow. So therefore, I guess we'll create that one in our application layer or use cases layer if we follow the clean architecture terminology. That would be this one. So here we have already enums, mapping profile, profiles, models, posts, and user profiles. And yeah, let's add a new folder here, and it's always called directory in Rider. So now we have here, yeah, let's name these options. And here we'll add a new class. The name of the class should be exactly as the name of the property that we have in our JSON settings file. Okay. Sources are modified. Okay. The application is running. Okay. Let's stop that. So it's not running anymore. Now it's okay. So I guess it should be fine. So the first property is signing key. And I will just copy this from here. Make sure that we don't have any typos or things like that. So public string, then this name. That would be one property. Then the next one, issuer. I guess it's easier and not so hard to mistype. But no, we are here. And everything's a string except the last one, public string issuer get set. The last one should be an array, of course, of strings. So it's this audience. Okay. String array. Although I guess I want to pluralize that. Audiences, not just audience. Okay. Cool. So okay, we have this class now to hold these settings. And for now, I guess we are done here in this application layer. Now we have to set up actually authentication and authorization in ASP.NET Core. Now, normally, I would probably, of course, we need to do this in our registers. And we have here our MVC register that actually adds all the services that we need. And that kind of like are bound or belong to the idea of MVC or to the core ASP.NET Core functionality. However, my concern is that setting up authentication and authorization will require a lot of code, and probably I would like to put this in a different place. Maybe that would be important, I guess. So yeah, let's create a new class for that. And let's call this identity register. Okay, that should implement the iWeb application builder register interface, and we can just implement the method. And okay, so here is actually what we will do. First of all, we would need to actually read this these settings for JSON Web Tokens that we have already defined. So that would be a first thing that we need to do. Let me check if everything is okay with the stream, but I guess it is. Hope you can still hear me. That would be very, very important. So the very first thing that I would like to do here is to have a var JWT settings equals new JWT settings. And you'll see just in a while why we need that. And then I would also like on the builder.configuration.bind, and this bind is a generic one, and I say that I want to bind to JWT settings. Okay. That's okay. Bind is not like that. I guess in bind we can specify a key and a value, the key for the setting that we want. We can take this with name of and JW settings. Let's make sure that it's the correct one. It's the CWK social application options. Okay, it's the correct one. So we want to bind this, and we want to bind it to this object that we have created previously. So by the time this line of code gets executed, this object here should contain all the settings that we have in the app settings.json file. That's how this is supposed to work. And if we are there, let's also add this configuration to the options. So it will be builder.configuration services. It's on services dot configure, and here this one is generic. So we want to configure JWT settings. Okay, and we have also to provide for the configuration. We have actually to provide the configuration section that we actually need. Let's maybe extract this in a different variable. var dot section equals builder dot configuration dot get section. It would be this one, and here we can just provide a string. Well, let's use name of if we can. Okay, so we should be good to go with this one, and here we just have to provide the JWT section, and that should be fine right now. I guess that should do it. And theoretically, if we run this application, but what errors do we have? Let me check. Where do we have? I forgot a semicolon somewhere. Of course. Is it only me that forgets semicolons, or does this also happen to you? Cool. Okay, so we have this one, and if we set a breakpoint here, and I just want to debug right now this application. I guess we still have problems, or? The idea is that this is part of the application startup. So we can already actually test if we have everything here. And we see here that, yeah, we stopped here. And in the JWT settings, okay, what do we have here? It's the audiences, which is a string array, and that's okay. We have the issuer and we have the signing key, which is cool. And then the configuration we can't really actually test right now. Okay, let's just stop that because we don't need it anymore. But the idea is that right now we have proved that we can actually read everything from the settings file. So at least that we can read everything that we need. And now we can actually go on and set up all the other part of the authentication and authorization that we need. And here there are some steps that we actually need to follow. Okay, so let's see if I'll be able to get this right. This is also not something that I do every day, adding authentication or authorization. So it would be builder.services add authentication. Okay, but this one takes in a lambda that allows us to actually configure it, and we want to add authentication, so therefore we have this A, and then we have this object here. Okay, and in this object there are some things that we need to specify. First of all, we need to specify the default authentication scheme, which should be, there is a class bearer defaults, I guess it should be. Let me see if we can resolve that. Create property. Okay, no, I don't want to create a new property. Maybe it's bearer defaults with an S at the end. No. That should be, I guess, in the Microsoft ASP.NET Core authentication jot bearer. Okay, let me just try to add using Microsoft.ASP.NET Core authentication dot. It doesn't have that. I'm not sure exactly why, but I guess maybe we need to install the Microsoft ASP.NET Core Identity package. Let me just check something here. Okay, so let's try to install a NuGet package. Okay, we have a problem. I know that we have a problem. So let me do that. Where are here NuGet? Okay, and let's look for that project. Microsoft.asp core.authentication.jwt better. Okay, and the version 6.0.1. And I'm not sure exactly if we'll need that also in the application project. I guess maybe we will need some other assemblies there. Yes, Sergey. It should be Microsoft ASP.NET Core authentication jot bear, but it didn't find, so that's why we tried to install it right now. Okay, so we have this in the API layer. So this is where we want to install that. But thank you very, very much for jumping in. I was thinking that this package should already be part of ASP.NET Core. So yeah, but was it not part of ASP.NET Core in previous versions? Because I don't remember to have installed anything when I configured authentication on other versions. Or maybe I'm just wrong with that. Okay, then what we also need to provide here is a default scheme, which would essentially be exactly the same. Right now, as we have only one authentication scheme, it's just this one, but we can add several different authentication schemes if we want. And usually when you're building also, well, MVC applications or Blazor, you might want to have also integration with third-party providers, and for each of them you would have to actually set up. But of course here is semicolon. You would have to set up then an authentication scheme for that, and then actually choose exactly what authentication scheme you want to use in which scenarios. And what is the default challenge scheme, or what authentication scheme should be used when the user is not signed in and we should prompt it to sign in. Of course, that's once again probably in our API it won't be the case because it's just an API. We will have endpoints for that, and it's exactly the same because it's the jot bearer defaults. That's what we actually want, and that's actually a constant. And if we take a look at that, the cool thing about Rider is that it actually, when you try to do that, it actually downloads the code, and you can really see the code that is implemented, and that's actually the constant that we are adding or defining. So yeah, that's kind of cool. Okay, so that would be it for this add authentication. But of course, we also want to actually configure this jot bearer setup in our ASP.NET Core application. So in this case, we will have add JWT bearer. BEARER. Should be something like that, I guess. Okay. You know what? Let's maybe add also this one on a different line. I don't like the formatting, but I won't really bother right now to change that. And here, let's say JWT, because we are configuring JWT here. And once again, that's an object that would take a lot more stuff. Although right now it actually bothers me. So let's just reformat this a little bit. Okay, should be something like that, I guess. Okay, and here we need to set different settings for the token generation and validation. So JWT save token, first of all, let's put this to true. Then the validation of the token. That's what we'll define there, and here we'll need another nested object. JWT token validation parameters equals new token validation parameters. Okay, it's this one, but we'll also use here an object initializer for that. Okay, semicolon, we can already put it at the end. And here there are a bunch of different settings that we need to do. First of all, validate signing key. This would actually make sure that it validates the signing key that was used when that specific token was created. So, by the way, the idea is that these settings for the token validation parameters is actually the configuration on when a request comes in and it has a JSON web token in it, how do we actually want to validate them? And here in this token validation parameters, we actually need to set that up and define exactly how we would like to perform this validation. So that's what we actually are doing here in this token validation parameters. Now, the validate issuer signing key, we want to have this to true because we always want to validate the signing key. Then we need to provide the signing key itself that will be used for validation. So when you want to validate a signing key from an incoming JSON web token, you have to compare it to something. So to what will you compare that? And that's what we actually need to specify here. So we have this issuer signing key, and here this should be a new symmetric security key. And here we actually need to provide a byte array that contains that signing key that we have set there in our JSON settings, in our app settings.json file. So that's why we actually needed that. And for that, we already have these Jode settings that have everything in them. So we can simply say here encoding. It needs to be in ASCII format or an ASCII encoding, get bytes. And then we have to provide the JWT settings and the signing key. And once again, the signing key should be exactly 32 characters long. That's a very important part of that. Okay, so right now we have kind of like some problem with the parentheses here. I'm not sure where exactly. Okay, there are too many right now. So let's start once again. This one is actually that one. So actually we have to delete two. Okay. Still not okay. I guess we should have two parentheses. Okay, so what's the problem here? Semicolon. Okay. But I have a semicolon. Is this not a semicolon? Okay. Sorry, we need a comma here, not a semicolon. Okay. because we are in an object initializer here. Yeah, happens. Thank you very much, Sergey. Sergey, where are you from? I would be very, very curious to know where you are from. Okay, so we have this issuer signing key, and we get that key that we have defined in the JSON web token settings in our absenting.json file, and we create a new symmetric key based on them. So this will be used for comparison when we want to validate the token. The token. So you're from Canada, Alberta. Okay, that's nice. From the name, I was hoping you would say you are from Moldova or something, because yeah, I actually visited Moldova also in November, and I quite like it there. And unfortunately, I didn't visit Canada. I was very close to Canada. I was in Seattle, so I was really very, very close to Canada, but never actually did it to actually also visit Canada. And well, I wanted to visit Vancouver at least, but yeah, unfortunately it did not happen. But well, hopefully this pandemic will go away and our travel might be a little bit more predictable, so maybe I can revisit those places. Okay, so but we still need also some other things that we want to do. We want to set a validate issuer, not actor, validate issuer, and we set this to true. And once again, we set this property to true, but then we also have to instruct and say what is actually a valid issuer. And we have this actually in our JWT settings, because we have the issuer. So the issuer needs to be us. If the token was issued by anybody else, then it's not a valid token. But why I do get a lot of this stuff here. Okay, so validate issuer. Then we have to validate audiences. So the token should be for one of the audiences that we have here. And we set this true. And once again, we have to define what actually a valid audience means. And this once again, I'm not sure exactly. Okay, Ryder, I understand that you want to be helpful, but you're really not helpful in this case. Okay, so validate audience. We have this in JOD settings, not the sections. And this is an array. But here, I guess this valid audience should only be a string. That's but validate audience, valid audiences. Okay, yeah, and that should be fine right now. And then what else do we actually want to do here? We want require expiration time. So we really want that the expiration time should be present on the token, or actually not really. Not sure. Don't think we really need that, because what we will do instead is we'll validate lifetime. And yeah, that's actually what we'll set to true. And I guess that it should be enough. Yeah, so this would be then the settings for our validation. And let's maybe go outside this object right now and say here JWT audience. Maybe we want to set a default audience on this one. Okay, and the default audience should maybe be exactly what we have here. So JWT settings dot audiences, and we'll take the first one. That should be like the default audience. And then last but not least, the claims issuer. So who actually issues the claims on the token? and that should be our issuer. Okay. Good, and I guess that should be all that we need right now, if I'm not wrong. So yeah, that's actually all that we need when adding authentication with JSON Web Tokens into our application. So that should be okay. Now we need to actually do another step, and we need to actually tell Swagger where exactly, or that we also have authentication. And Swagger will automatically then add the necessary headers and things similar to that. But this is what we actually need to do here in this configure Swagger options. This is where we have moved everything regarding okay. How should we do that? Do you need to set valid types to 80 plus JWT token in validation parameters? To be honest, I never did that. In most projects, it was working like this, the configuration. So I never recall setting those valid types. Okay. Okay. Now what we'll do here is we will actually start from a very simple thing, I guess. We won't have separate access token and separate ID tokens because, well, that's actually a very good point. Maybe we'll kind of have like a combination of that, at least for the very first setting up. Then we might want to tweak that around. But I was thinking of just creating an endpoint for the registration and an endpoint for the login. And then if you provide correct credentials, then you will get the JSON web token that you would actually need to put in each header. So at least right now, I was not thinking about implementing the entire OAuth 2.0 implicit flow. But yeah, it could be something. That could be also an opportunity if you want to add that. Maybe you can do that. Then, as I said when I was starting, we have a GitHub repository, and I strongly encourage anybody who wants to contribute to just contribute. But yeah, I guess that's an idea that we would have to look into. I just wanted to keep it simple for now and not implement the entire flow, because in that case I would have rather, maybe, I don't know, used another library, not the default ASP.NET Core identity. Okay, good. So going back to our Swagger stuff and configuration, let's add maybe here a new private method for that, and private, and that would return an open API security scheme. That's what we need to return. Get JWT security scheme. So it would be something like that, I guess. And well, I guess we can keep it simple. Return a new open API security scheme. Okay, and an object initializer for that. Good. So here there are a few things that we will need to provide for Swagger. That would be, first of all, a name. JWT authentication. Then description equals, I don't know, provide a JWT better. Then in equals parameter location header. That's what I want. And then type equals security scheme type HTTP. I guess it should be this one, because I said this won't be the entire auth flow. It will be just, okay, provide me some credentials and I will give you a token for that. Okay, and then we need to provide the scheme name. And here we just need to provide this string better. That will be added to the header. Better format. That would be JWT, I guess. And then what we also need is a reference for the OpenAPI security scheme. And this would be equal to new OpenAPI reference. Okay. And here in this reference, actually, we would have to provide an identifier, and the identifier could be JWT better defaults. So the exact one that we have used previously, the authentication scheme. And then we need a type, reference type. Where is it? I guess it should be a security scheme. Where do we have that? Here. And it should be okay like that. And that should actually be it for this one. Now we have to actually go just a little bit back. And here we have this create version info. But no, this is not something that we need. The create version info is, well, the method that creates the version info. And here we are iterating through the different versions, and then we create the version info for that. However, I think that we don't need to add actually the security for each version separately, because we use the same security infrastructure for that. So you can say here var scheme equals get JWT security scheme, because we will need that. Then we will have these options. Here we should have this add security definition. Okay. Now in this security definition, we would need a scheme reference.id, and we will need to provide also the entire scheme that we have created. Okay, of course, here we need a comma for that. And then, if I recall correctly, we also need, I guess that would be a semicolon here. We would also need a security requirement. Add security requirement. Okay. And in the security requirement, that's actually something that was very strange. We need to provide an object here, new security requirement. That's correct. But then here, we also need to provide an object. Or how was that? Something like scheme. And I guess we need to have a new string array of 0. To be honest, I'm really not sure about these settings, why exactly we need each of them. But as I recall, when you want to set up a Swagger to use this type of stuff, that's actually what you should provide. Of course, something is still not right here, it seems. Either we have too many parentheses, or we have too few, but I guess we had too many. And I guess more or less this should work now. I'm not sure. We have a problem. Let's see what problems do we have. Okay, has 0 parameters but is invoked with 1 argument. Okay. I guess we need to have it like this. Yeah, because it should be an object initializer. And I really don't know exactly why we should provide here also this string array, but I recall the last time that I did that. Well, it's simply the explanation that I found also on the Swagger documentation. So if anybody of you know better exactly what these things are, then yeah, just feel free to maybe also let me know. But let's try this out, like actually right now, because we already can try that out. Let's just debug the application. So Alt F5 should be. Okay, it was opened on the other screen. Let's bring it here. So yeah, right now you see that we have this button here for authorize, and here we have, well, we can provide anything here right now and authorize. And right now, each time that will make a request, actually Swagger will automatically, for instance, if we do on this one, try it out, execute. So if we do request on this one, right now it really doesn't do anything, but Swagger will automatically add the bearer header to the request, or the authorization header. So we don't have to actually take care about that. And yeah, we did get these user profiles. However, since we are here, let's just delete these user profiles, because we will want to create them from scratch through the process of creating actually. But you know, we have, I guess, also posts, or did we delete the posts? Yeah, let us check. Okay, so we have one post. Let's delete it. Okay. Waiting for deletion. Do we have a breakpoint here? I guess yes, we have a breakpoint. I guess that's from the last session when we did implement this endpoint. So yeah, let's. Okay, it was a 204. This means that it was deleted. Let's maybe try to check this out. Yeah, right now it's an empty array. So we have deleted the posts. Now let me go and delete user profiles. So first of all, we need to delete this one. Try it out. Okay. Deleted. And then the second one. Okay, 204. Which means that right now we shouldn't have any users. Yeah, right now we are blank. Okay. So we have even cleaned up our database right now. Okay. Cool. So right now we have this. So we have set up authentication and authorization from the perspective of what we need to set up in our register and in our Swagger configuration. But I guess there is something else that we need to set up here in our DB register, because we need to, because here we add the DB context, but okay, it's still running. Let's So we have builder dot services dot add identity core. Okay, and here we have to provide identity user, which is actually part of Microsoft ASP.NET Core identity. So it means I was wrong. Microsoft ASP.NET Core Identity is part of Microsoft ASP.NET Core, but the Jot Bearer authentication library is not part of that, and that's why we needed to install that. Okay, so we have this add identity core, and this adds a bunch of identity services actually to our dependency injection container that we will actually need in order to be able to create users, reset passwords, set passwords, and things similar to that. But we also have to instruct it to add entity framework stores, and our store is the data context, because it will use the data context to actually write all the information. And if you haven't watched any of these videos so far, the idea is that in our infrastructure layer or data access layer, if we look at our data context, we already inherit from identity DB context. So we already have everything in our database that is required by Microsoft ASP.NET Core Identity. We don't really need to add anything else, and we also have the identity user. So this is why actually I have used that identity user in our register here. DB register. Okay, but still we have some problems here. It's just a warning. Okay, so that shouldn't be too problematic, I guess. Okay, so yeah, I guess right now we would have all the needed setup to really start to think about how do we actually want to orchestrate this entire process, and actually also generating that token. So here we will actually have to implement two different API endpoints, one for registering a user, which will be used when we want to register, or when clients, consumers want to register a totally new user. And there will be also a login endpoint that will be used when existing users need to log in, providing a combination of username and password. So yeah, we will have to do that. But I will take a very short break. I guess it will be around 10 minutes. And then I will be back and we will continue to code on that, because the fun part actually only now starts, as we will need to actually create the needed API endpoints, the comments, the command handlers, and doing actually the fun stuff of generating the tokens and returning them, and how we want to return them, and then maybe just securing one of our controllers with the authorized attribute, so that we validate always the tokens. So that's what we still plan to do today. So yeah, please stay tuned. Maybe go grab a drink, grab some water, and we'll be back in around, I don't know, 10 minutes at most. So not more than that. So please stand by. Okay guys, so I am back. I told you it shouldn't take too long. So before we get going with this one, I just wanted to well, briefly let you know, because we are doing a lot of stuff here on this channel. I'm not sure exactly if you are for the first time here, or if you already watched the other videos also in the series or the past live streams. But the idea is that if you actually want to support this channel, there are a lot of things that you can do to actually support it. The first and probably the most important one is to, well, really subscribe to this channel, maybe share it with your colleagues, with friends, with whoever you might think it might be useful. And that would be really, really great. And if you want to go the extra mile for that, we have also just below the text box where you enter messages in the text, that super thanks button or feature that you could use to actually, well, donate something, and that will also be highly appreciated. Yeah. However, no matter if you use that button or not, things will continue here on this channel, regular videos, one video each 2 or 3 days, and also live streams, both for very, very beginners and also sessions like that. I also plan to do a bunch of different things here in during this year. I already work on a concept where we will actually take an application and we will refactor that, and that would be also, I guess, some very, 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 very fun. I also have a library for .NET 6 minimal APIs. Probably will also do some coding on that library during live streams. And yeah, that's pretty much it. What I plan to do for this year. But I really hope to be able to keep this up and provide a lot of content that hopefully might also be useful to you. So once again, thank you very much for watching, of course. And if you want to support this channel the ways that I already explained, that would be really awesome. Okay, so this being said, let's go back to work actually. Good. So we would need to implement some endpoints right now. Okay, so let's start from our API routes. So that's the class where we define actually the routes for all of our controllers. And let's create a new nested class here. Public static class, and I guess we'll call this route identity. Okay, and here we will have probably two endpoints. It will be public constant string. It would be one for login. Okay, and one for registration, at least to start with. Public constant string registration equals register. Or let's call this registration. Do not use a verb. We kind of like just a little bit to stay close to the REST principle, so we don't want to use verbs here. But yeah, also like all the principle REST is very useful, but in some cases where you have to work with a lot of task-based applications, you might not always be ready to represent everything 100% REST compliant, and you might want to use also some namings that are not 100% REST compliant. For most of the part, as you can see, we really try to stick to all the REST conventions, but here let's just name these endpoints login and registration. And I guess that would be like that. And I'm not sure if you followed, maybe I guess it was 15 or 20 minutes back when Sergey mentioned something. I would deduce or assume that he was talking about access tokens. And what I would like to maybe explain here for those of you who might be newer is that normally when we have this type of an API, this API is or would normally be consumed probably by single page applications, like an application that you would write in Angular or React or Blazor. And probably that's also an idea. We'll create some Blazor frontend for this application at a certain point. That would also be something. But the idea is that usually when we are in this type of scenarios, if we want to be 100% by the book, actually there are certain industry standards when it comes to authentication and authorization. And those standards are the OpenID Connect standard and the OAuth 2.0 standard. Now the OpenID Connect standard is actually for the authentication part, and the OAuth 2.0 standard is for the authorization part. And there are different type of flows based on different type of scenarios that you might have. But usually when we have this type of combination between a backend API and a frontend application, what we would need to implement is theoretically what is called the implicit flow. Now, what this flow actually says is that we have to actually, first of all, of course, distinguish the step of authenticating users from the step that would actually provide authorization or rights or things that actually those users can do actually in the application. And the way that this would be would be supposed to work is that first of all, the consumers, the clients will need to make a request for authentication, and that request would only authenticate the user or make sure that the user is in the database. Now, the response to that is also in a JSON Web Token format, but that is usually called an ID token, and that contains purely information about the identity of the specific user. Now, this implicit flow would also say that if you want to do some stuff in the application for which you need to be authorized, the application itself would actually need to call another token endpoint and exchange actually that ID token received during authentication for an access token, which is the authorization token that would also maybe include things like the roles that the user has and things similar to that. And only that second token would then be used by the client in the authorization header. However, right now, as I said, I just wanted to get this started, and we take the most simple approach in this case, as we are the owners of the users and the owner of the entire process, I would say. We actually try to simplify this a little bit, And we have just two endpoints, the registration where brand new users will be registered, and the login when we just want to exchange the combination of a username and a password for a JSON Web Token. Now, we work only with one type of JSON Web Token that will contain all the information that we need so far. But yeah, probably, or it might be a good idea, maybe at a certain point we'll enhance this and implement the entire implicit flow. But however, in that case, you would also have to take into consideration maybe the scenarios where you might have, I don't know, server to server communication. And in that case, you might have to implement also a different type of flow. And yeah, of course, that could become very, very complicated. But what I would like to do now is actually have a very basic setup to start with. And then, of course, we can build on top on that setup if we, at a certain point, see that we actually require to actually also add some extra stuff. So that's the whole story behind of what we are trying to do, and how this would normally be done. Although, and here you might say that probably I'm not right, but once again, from a practical point of view, if you are creating applications that will be used actually inside the same company, so the API, both the API and the front end, then actually this type of setup that we have right here would be actually sufficient. Okay, yeah, I guess that was a fairly long explanation, but hopefully some of you have found that useful. Good, so we have defined right now these two new endpoints that we will have. Now the next thing, we will have to think about the contracts, which are basically the API contracts. And let's add a new folder here. And we'll call this folder, where is directory, okay? We'll call this identity, okay? Now here, usually we have here for posts and user profile, we have requests and responses, but here we won't have that many models or that many contracts, so we'll keep everything in one single folder. So first one, we would need a user registration contract. So that would be what the consumer should provide us in the JSON body when they want to register a user. Okay, that would be the user registration. And then the other one would be login. Okay. And as said, here I guess things will be fairly easy because this would be it would be a public string username, public string password. Now to make it easier to work with ASP.NET Core Identity, username will actually be in the format of email address, and it will be required. So we are also doing some basic validation, and the password would be a password. I guess this one. Password pro initialize a new instance of the password property text attribute class. Okay, indicate that an object's text representation is obscured by characters such as asterisk. This class can be inherited. But this won't be displayed in our front end. So I guess we can even skip that, because theoretically you would still send this via an HTTPS request. Of course, we are using, I guess, HTTPS also here, but I'm not sure that we actually need this. You would need this if you want to render this in, I don't know, maybe a Razor page or Razor view. But right now, I guess we don't need that. But it's still required. Okay. So these are some attributes. Now for this user registration, that would be a little bit more complicated. And I guess we would have to take also a look, because when we register a user, we actually need to also register the profile for that user. Now, let's maybe start with some properties here. So public string username. Okay, then when we register, we want to also set the password, password string, public string password. Okay, so we should be good with that right now. But then we have to think about the properties that we actually need for the user profile. So let's take a look at our domain layer, and here in the user profile. But this is still the API. Sorry. Yeah. That's the API. That's the domain. In aggregate, we have this user profile aggregate, and we actually have this type of basic info. So for the basic info, we actually need first name, last name, email address, phone, date of birth, and current city. And let me also look a little bit at the validators. So first name, okay, it's required, and it should have a length between 3 and 50. Okay, let's try to replicate this here in our contracts. Identity, user registration. Okay. Here we have the validator. So first, the first name, public string first name. Okay, what's wrong with that? Cool. Let's also add some attributes here. So this username, let's just make it required, and it should be an email address. Okay, and the password just be required. Yeah, maybe let's also set this password property text. Okay, then the first name, first of all, it should be required, and then it should have a mean length of 3, and a max length of, I guess it was 50. Okay, so this was for the first name. The second one is for the last name, and it's exactly the same thing, so with 3 and 50. Public string last name. Okay, and it should be exactly the same. Required. Now we can just copy that over. Okay, because the idea is that we have to actually keep in sync what we actually get from our clients with actually what is required in the domain. That's what we actually need to be sure we make sure. Otherwise, we'll get errors when we try to create something. And then we have this email address. It is not null, and it should be an email address. So this is already actually done because it's required, and it's marked as being an email. Now the date of birth. Okay, that will be a little bit tricky to simulate. Maybe we'll just have to add a fluent validation at a certain point also on the UI. Oh, sorry, on the API part. The idea is that we have to make sure that it's inclusive between. So yeah, we just have set this rule that the person should, the date provided should be, well, in this range actually. Let's see if we can model that. public string date of that's actually not a string, it's a date time. And I guess that should be required first of all. Okay. And I'm not sure. I guess we can specify a range. This double. Do we have also a date for that? So the date range should be this now. Actually, we can just take this here. And let's see if that will work. No, this range doesn't work with okay. Cannot resolve constructor range attribute system date time. So we have here double, and we have here range attribute int. But I guess we can. I guess I have an idea for that. Because the date time can also be actually represented, I guess, as an int. Because it has the ticks. Okay, so let's maybe set here the some constant public const, actually private int minimum date equals but why date time now add the years. So we have to make sure that the date is not from, I don't know, a lot of time in the past. So we assume that maybe the maximum age of somebody using this will be 125 years. Then we should get the ticks, but ticks are long. Yeah, it's long. Okay. And this range, let's look into this range constructor. Okay, range attribute. Let's see. So int, we have int, minimum and a maximum. Then we have double. We have string. That's not funny. That's not funny at all. I really am a little bit baffled because this range actually supports int and double, but it doesn't support long. That's not what we actually. That doesn't help us. Let's express it this way. That doesn't really help us. Well, I guess for now we'll just leave it as it is. And we don't provide a range. And that's it. If the dates are not correct, then the domain will actually respond with an error. And the consumer will get an exact error with what happened and what the validation problem is. So we'll just make this required for now. Now, in the basic info, so string of first name, last name, email address, then we have phone and current city. So these are still information that we need. Public string phone and public string current city. Okay, cool. So we have this one, and let's maybe also take a look into the user profile itself, see if we need anything for the user profile. User profile, we just need the identity ID, but this is not something that we will get from the clients. This is something that will be generated once we add the user, the identity user, to the database. So that's not something that we would have to really care about right now. And then the basic info object, and for the basic info object, we need all the things that we have already added here. So we are good with that. Okay, now we can delete this constant. We don't need it in the end. We'll maybe look into a way to add fluent validation here in ASP.NET Core, but I guess that's a topic that we'll cover at some other point. So I guess that would be then the contract for registering a user. Okay. Let's maybe just, I don't know. Is there not an easy way to actually take everything from here and... But this is the domain. In the domain model, we haven't implemented yet. We haven't implemented yet this global usings. So we leave it like it is right now. But here, if we go here into this one, using system component model, write the code and can be safely removed. Okay, that's nice. But you know what? I guess we'll also remove this one, because as said, we don't need this password property tags here. This would be only useful in the UI to actually obfuscate the password if we are there. So yeah, in that case, I guess we should be fine. Have we added any new files? I guess we have added new files here. Let's okay, this identity register is what we have added, and here we have system.text, system application options, ASP.NET Core authentication.pair, and identity model tokens. Okay, let's just remove that from here and move it in our global usings file. Of course, we'll have to add here the global. Okay. So I guess we should be fine with that. Let's make sure that it still works. Yeah, it works, of course. What did we add or edit? Yeah, here we just added this type of stuff, but nothing really changed. In the global usings, we have done some changes. In the config options, we have done some changes, but I guess here we didn't. Authentication.pair, here they already tell us that we can just remove that because it was already added in the global usings. Okay. And then I guess that's pretty much it. We haven't touched anything else so far, so I guess we should be good to go. Now, I'm talking a lot here, so I see that well, I'm not talking alone, which is nice. So thank you very much for tuning in and for standing by, of course. That's very, very nice of you, and I totally appreciate it. Whenever you want to say something or add something or whatever goes through your mind, and just feel free to use the chat here, because that's why we have the chat here. That's why we do this type of live sessions, to be able to also interact directly and actually learn from each other. Okay, so we have the contracts right now. I guess we can go over to our controllers in V1, and I guess we'll need here a new controller. Here it would be let's call this identity controller. Okay. Now we will actually take a look here at our other controllers because we need to implement this base controller, which is our base controller class, our own, because we have some protected methods there that we might want to be able to reuse. So that's what we inherit. And then we also need this type of stuff here. Okay. Cool. We have this API version 1. Now, the only thing is that the API route would be the base route. Actually, let's take a look at that. But the base route contains API version and the controller. So I guess we should be okay with that. And we just have to use these on the endpoints themselves or on the actions. So the base route is okay for that. We don't need anything else. And of course, that's also an API controller. So here we should be okay. Your chat is followers only. So that's probably why do you already have both a V1 and V2? Because I just wanted to add this support for different versions, so that whenever somebody new will work on the API and if they need to actually create new versions for different methods, then everything should already be set up. So everybody knows exactly how to do that. And we have already set up also the Swagger support for that. So when you just need to create V2 endpoints, you can just go on and do that. Now somebody's saying your chat is followers only, so that's probably why. Okay. That was a comment from Twitch. By the way, I'm streaming both on Twitch and on YouTube at the same time. So thank you very much for yeah. Yeah. I know, but I guess I will have to check my my Twitch settings, because theoretically it shouldn't be followers only. Well, I didn't even know that that it's all followers only. However, the idea is that unfortunately on Twitch there aren't that many viewers, so usually I get most of my viewers on YouTube. That's why maybe sometimes I neglect a little bit the Twitch thing. But thank you very much for mentioning this. I will look into the settings that I have on my Twitch channel and make sure that that anybody would be able to comment, not only followers. So thank you very much for mentioning that. And I hope that I was able to respond to your question regarding the V1 and the V2. Okay, so we have this this controller here. We have everything that we would need, I guess. So the next thing would be to, of course, implement the necessary methods that we would need here. But before, probably the only things that we would need to inject through the dependency injection system would be the iMediator and the iMapper private read-only, of course. iMediator. Okay. And the next one, private read-only iMapper. Okay. And then we need a constructor, and we just need those services, iMediator, mediator, and iMapper. We'll probably need to also create some mapping profiles. iMapper, mapper. Okay. Okay, cool. Now we have this one, and of course we have to set those. Mapper equals to mapper. By the way, question to my Twitch viewers: in which category am I streaming right now? Because I don't have the Twitch channel dashboard open right now. So if you can just let me know, that would be great, because I hope I'm streaming in the, I guess it's software and game development category. that's what I would expect it to be. But if it's something else, then software and game development with tags, web development, programming, English, IRL. Yeah, the IRL tag is added automatically by Twitch. I'm not sure why. I wanted to remove it a lot of times because I'm not doing any IRL stuff here, at least for now. But by the way, on Twitch, I might start also streaming something else than programming. And that would be me playing chess, because I spend a lot of time learning and playing chess lately. And well, if I got into this idea of streaming, I thought maybe, okay, why not stream also something else or something other than programming. So if you follow me on Twitch, you might even see me streaming also some other stuff. Okay, so we have this one. Let's implement now some endpoints, and I would say we will start with public I to be async task of I action result, and the first one would be register. And let's start with the registration, because in order to log in we already need to have a user. So here this will be an HTTP post, of course, and we would also need to specify the route here. Route that would be API routes, identity, registration. That would be the route, and we will have here the model, the contract that would come in from the body, which is user registration. Let's just call it registration. Okay, and it added it here. So each time that I want to add something, I wonder if I can configure Rider to actually add automatically all the usings in the global usings part, because otherwise you just need to be careful. This is a very new feature of C#10, as said, and it's not that I have used it a lot so far, because I'm still used to have the usings at the top of the page. So yeah, good. So we have this one right now, should be fine. Of course, right now we just have an error. Let's maybe just have a return okay for now, and that would be it. Cool. Now the other thing that we already have a filter that is a validate model, and that would automatically, and by the way, if you haven't watched the other videos, let me show you around. So we have this validate model, which is an action filter, and we have registered it, or well, we add it as an attribute on the actions where we want to validate the model. And the idea is that instead of doing in each controller action this type of stuff, because theoretically we would have to do this in each of the controller methods, we have created a filter for that. So whenever a request comes in that is marked with this validate model attribute, it will just when the action is about to be executed, or when the execution actually starts, but before we actually go into the code itself of this one, what we do is that we do this validation. So if the model is not valid, in that case we create our custom API error that we have as part of our contract, and just return that. And by the way, that's not needed anymore because we have already implemented that. So yeah. So this new comment, that's interesting. I didn't know you could hook into the request pipeline like that. You can. You actually have different ways to do that. And you have, well, actually two main ways to do that. So first of all, and let me go to the MVC web application register. First of all, you can hook into the pipeline here by registering your own middleware. And as said, when a request comes in, it travels actually in this order, so from up to down, through all the registered middleware components. So this is one way to actually get into this kind of pipeline. But more granular than that is, after when the request arrives here, this is actually where ASP.NET Core tries to look at the request and find a controller and an action to execute that. Now, when it finds a controller action, it does some stuff to that, but it actually provides you this idea of filters that would actually allow you to perform some type of actions before the request is executed, after the request, or before the controller action is executed, after the controller action is executed, or while this controller action is executed, or right when the execution starts. And that's actually what we do here in our validate model attribute. But of course, I guess we won't talk here about all the filters, because there are different filter types, and within the filters pipeline they also are executed in a certain order, because we have, for instance, authorization filters that are actually executed first. Then we have action filters, resource filters, and I also don't really know exactly or 100% all of these filters and the exact order in which they are executed. But the idea is that, for instance, I'm sure that authorization filters are the first filters to be executed, and action filters are filters that are executed, as said, right before actually ASP.NET Core would invoke this method here. But yeah, it's a very powerful way to actually do things here, because you could use that for, as we see here, for model validation, so that we don't have to clutter our action with a lot of if model state is valid and things like that. You could use it even for error handling. You could even use, actually, I guess we have also a filter for that. We also have a filter for that. So we have this one, which is an exception filter. And this one actually will just be triggered when an exception occurs that is actually not handled in any way. And in that case, once again, we can just, catch that. And instead of doing a try catch in each controller action, we just have this exception filter, and we catch the exception here if there is any exception. And yeah, we just do our stuff. In this case, we create once again our custom error response, which for now, it just contains a status code, which we define in our application, a status phrase, and a list of errors and a timestamp. So yeah, this is the exception filter. And we have then this validate GUID. And once again here on action executing, here is because we use most of the times GUIDs for IDs. So when a request comes in and we have in the route like the ID, that will be in GUID format. But we have to make sure that it is really in GUID format, because otherwise we will have a lot of errors. So what we do is, on the actions that we mark with this attribute, we actually do the validation and try to parse that string to a GUID. And if everything's okay, then we just return. But if it is not okay, we once again return our custom error response and say that we have a bad request. And in this case, we have this identifier for key is not a correct GUID format. So everything actually helps us to unclutter our controllers with. So all the cross-cutting concerns, we can actually move into this type of filters that we have. Even if you want to do some logging before the action and after the logging, maybe for, I don't know, for timings and things like that, you can totally do that also. So yeah, filters are very, very powerful, and I totally use them. Okay. We'll try to implement this, that in this project. What do you mean? What will you try to implement in this project? You mean the project that you are working on right now, or you want to contribute to this project? Because, as said, I'm not sure if you follow from the beginning, but we have a GitHub repository, and actually I'm very, very happy because yesterday I had a very first outside contribution from somebody, and it was okay. I'm working on .NET Core API to get familiar with .NET 6. Okay, so I try these filters. Cool. Be careful though, because if you're using the minimal API in .NET 6, minimal API doesn't support filters. So this is only available if you have a regular .NET 6 application with controllers, like we have it here. Like if you have a minimal API application, then filters don't work. Then you would have to actually find other workarounds. But that's actually something that I'm not sure when you actually jumped in to this stream, but I also have like a package which is very small right now for .NET 6 minimal API, which is called Smart Modules. And in that package, right now, well, I provide some ways to automatically be able to actually follow a module-based approach when you structure your application, your minimal API application. And one thing that I would plan to do there is actually Microsoft Package Manager is too explicit for Twitch. Okay. Okay. Yeah, well. Good. But yeah, the idea is that if you're using a minimal API in .NET 6, filters are not supported. So filters do not work there. Only if you have controllers, you have filters. And I will try in this Smart Module package to add something similar to filters for minimal APIs also. But for now, yeah, that is not supported. Okay, I'm really glad that you had all these questions, and thank you very much for jumping in to the discussion. Okay, good. So where did we actually finish? Okay, so we validate the model. That's okay. Now we already need to think about how do we handle this request. So first of all, I guess we will have to go to our application layer. And here, now in the options, we don't do that, but we have these models. No, not models. What do we need? Because we have posts, we have user profiles. Okay, let's have a new folder identity. Directory. Okay. And in this folder, we won't have any queries here. We will just work with commands. So commands and handlers. We can even name it handlers because as we will have only commands here. Okay, so I guess we'll have only two commands and two handlers, but I still want to keep the same structure that we also used previously. Like this is here, we have queries, we have command, we have query handlers and command handlers. Now here we won't have any queries in identity because we won't get any data. This endpoint is just or only for login and register. So that would be it. Now the first command, let's start with that one, class. Register identity, I guess like that. Now in this register identity, I guess that we would need actually most of the properties that we have here in this user registration. So everything will need to be provided in this command. So we can just copy that over. And the reason why we are using that separately, because these are concerns of two different layers of the application. The fact that it happens right now for us that the properties will be named the same, that's a pure coincidence, let's say. But conceptually, these are two totally different things. So in our API layer, this is an external contract that we will expose publicly through the API documentation. In our case, through Swagger, and the command is a command in the CQRS perspective. So something that actually indicates a thing that needs to happen in our application, and a thing that also changes the state of the application. That's important maybe to to note when it comes to comments. Okay, and the comments they are not just pure protocol classes like we have our contract, but actually they need to implement an iRequest. Now, what will we return? I guess, as said, we just want, when you register the user, if everything was okay, we just want to return a string because we want to return the JSON web token. So yeah, iRequest. Okay, Alt Enter. So it would be an iRequest of string because string is actually what we will return. And iRequest is the interface that we need to implement from mediator, and based on this interface, mediator kind of like knows how to wire which command to which handler, or which or generally which request should be handled by which handler. So this would be the command, and then the handler for that is where we will put most of the logic that will implement and register identity handler. Okay, so this would need to implement the iRequest handler. And that one has two generic type params. The first one should be the command or the request that should be handled by this handler, and in this case this is the register identity. Okay, that's what we want to use. And then the second one is the return type. That's a string. But actually, let's change that, because in our layer we return a custom response always. So it will not be a string, but it will be an operation result of string. Okay. And therefore also here it would be an operation result. Operation result is our custom class, so we have created that because I think that's a good pattern from my experience on the applications that worked. This pattern with not throwing exceptions, but just returning a result and informing if there are errors, if not, and things like that is actually easier to follow, and it leaves space for less bugs. At least that's my experience to that. So here, what will we have here? First of all, we would need a constructor, and in this one we need two things, or maybe more, but no, I guess two. So private read only. So first of all, we will need our data context. That's for sure. Then we will also need a private read only. There is a service in Microsoft ASP.NET Core Identity that gets registered when we add authentication, and this is user manager. And this user manager is generic, so it's of type has identity user as a generic type param. Let's also add this read only, and this one, let's call it user manager. Okay, and then in the constructor we also need those. So it was user manager of identity user. Okay, and let's call it user manager. Cool. So it would be, let's assign them context user manager equals user manager. Okay, we should be good to go. Now, before we actually implement this, let's make it async. One other thing that we actually need to take care about, and we'll go back to our API layer for this one, is, well, we receive this type of model from the client that actually makes the request, and we would need to translate that to a command that we have just created. So we can do this manually, but we could even use AutoMapper for that because we already have that. So where do we have our mapping profiles? Here. user profile mappings, and let's add here a new class. No, not directory. I want just a new class. Where is class? Here. Okay, so it would be identity mappings. Okay. Now this should inherit from profile, which comes from automapper. Okay, cool. And then we have this constructor and register. How is that? A create map, not register map. Okay. Okay. And then the map would actually be very, very fun because we want to map from our contract. So the source for this mapping would be user registration. Okay. But the destination would be register user. How did we call the command? Register identity. Okay, and we add this. Yeah, let's move that also to the global usings. Where is the global usings file? Here. Okay. Okay, we're cool with that. Let's go back now. So we were, where are the mapping profiles? Okay. So we have created a map, and this should automatically map what we get actually from the body of the request, and it should map it to our command. So the mapping is done automatically in this case. So it means that in our controller, we can be very smart and say var command equals mapper.map. And I say that I want to map to register identity. Okay, and the source would be registration. So from what I get here in the body. Now, as we have those action filters, we actually can be sure that by the time the program will reach the execution of this line, we are sure that user registration is a valid model, and we are sure that it was no exception thrown in other places. So we can already be sure that we have all the required properties and everything that we actually need. So what we can do then is var result equals await mediator.send, and we send this command. Okay, if we hover over this should be of time register identity. Cool. Yeah, that's correct. That's what I would expect, at least. Okay, so okay, there's a question here. I noticed that global usings can't be shared between projects. I am guessing it will be logical to create one for each project. Yeah, that's correct, Sudi. And by the way, thank you very, very much for contributing. I'm not sure if you managed to watch from the beginning, but I started actually this stream by mentioning your contribution and what you have done. And once again, thank you very much for that. But yes, that's correct. You can't use global usings between projects. That's correct. However, one thing is that if you want to start to work on that, or whenever you want to start to work on something, please first of all create an issue for that, because I get notifications when this type of issues get created, and this would actually also help us make sure that maybe there wouldn't be two people that are working on the same thing at the same time, because that wouldn't be very, very nice. So just open an issue and start working on whatever you want. And yeah, once again, thank you very, very much for contributing. Cool. So now we have this result. Now the one thing that we could do here is so if something goes wrong, we will get here in the result, it will be marked as an error. So if result dot is error, so in that case, what we actually want to do is handle error response, and we just give to this method result dot errors. Okay, and of course we need to return that. Okay, now what we want to return, actually, we want to return not just a simple string but also a response object. So we might need to go here into our contract. So we have here a login and a user registration response, and actually both the login and user registration will generate more or less, I guess, the same response, and that response would actually be very simple: authentication result. This authentication result, public string token. Because if we have an error, then we will return our standard already existing error message or error response. Otherwise, both of them will return an authentication result. So this means that in the controller here, in this one, so if we pass this, if we don't have any errors, then what we will do here is var authentication result equals new authentication result. Okay, and we can just also use an object initializer here and say that the token equals to the result.payload, because the payload will contain the string, the token string to that. So yeah, and then of course what we will do here is we'll return an OK with authentication result. Cool. Now the only thing that it's still left is actually to implement the handler or to implement the handle method in the command handler that we will have here. So where do we identities and handlers? So yeah, that should be the one. Now that's the part where things will get a little bit more complicated, and maybe we'll need to do some refactoring at a certain point. And I know that yeah, it's already a little bit late, but I would like to take another, I don't know, 7 minutes break, and then we'll continue, because here we will have a bunch of stuff to do, because we will have to actually make sure that we create the identity user, and then that we actually, if the creation is successful, then we also create a user profile, then to actually generate the token, then we'll also have to implement the login endpoint, and that could also maybe take us something. And also most probably we'll have to think about but I'm not sure. But let's have another 7-minute break, and we'll continue afterwards with implementing this handler and wiring everything up together, and then hopefully also implementing the login endpoint, because if this is ready, actually that one should be easier to implement, as we will actually use a lot of the logic here, I guess. So except of the fact that we would have to create a user profile and an identity, when we log in we just have to check the credentials and then do exactly the same things like creating the token and returning that. So yeah, please stand by as we will continue our work here, and we will be back very, very, very soon. Okay, guys and girls, hopefully, I hope there are also some girls that are watching. So we are back, and I guess we are good to go. And by the way, please maybe just let me know in the chat from where are you watching. That would be very, very nice. And also, well, I say this after each break because I'm not sure exactly if we have new viewers or I assume probably nobody watched it from the beginning. But if there is somebody here that watched it from the beginning, I really a big thank you for that. But if you want to support this channel, this goes more for the YouTube viewers, then you have several options to really do that. First of all, and the most important would be to subscribe to this channel, to maybe share it, to make sure that also your friends or your colleagues subscribe to it, or for the matter, anybody that you think might find the content on this channel useful. So that would be really, really nice. And if you want to go the extra mile in supporting this effort, just below the text box where you enter your chat comments, there is a super thanks button that you can use to actually send a thank you or a custom sticker, and that would also be highly appreciated. Once again, I always say that even if you don't, it's no problem. So we'll continue to do this stuff here on this channel. So there's really no pressure on that, but it would be nice. Okay, so this being said, let's see how we can implement this handler for user registration. And here I guess we will have to perform several different steps. So first of all, let's have here var result equals new operation result of string. So that's the first thing that we do. Then the next thing that we do to be consistent in all our handlers, but no, it's not like that. So to be consistent in all of our handlers, we will wrap everything in a try catch, just for the case that something somewhere throws a certain exception. We will actually try to be consistent with all the other handlers. So let's just maybe, I don't know, look into a handler that we have here. And here the generic exception we catch, and we actually do the following. Okay. Now, the idea is that, as you see, in all handlers, we have this try catch and some things like that here. So I guess we will go on and implement some other feature of Mediator, which are pipeline behaviors. And those are, I would say, similar to the action filters that we have in ASP.NET Core controllers, meaning that you can wrap everything in such pipeline behaviors and move these cross-cutting concerns like exception handling in those behaviors. So we will maybe also take a look into that. And to be honest, I never really implemented pipeline behaviors from Mediator, so it will also be a first for me, but I will certainly do that. As said, doing this type of project and live sessions is also a learning opportunity for me. So yeah, let's for now just copy that over and move it here. Once again, the exceptions that we catch, we just don't want to throw them. Instead, what we want to do is we want to wrap them in our custom error class and just return them, because you see that here we result is error, then we add the errors to the result, and then of course at the end we just return the result. Okay, so if the result happens to be an error, then our consumers, in our case the controller action, will know what to do with that. We just actually inform about the operation that happened and the result that we have after that operation. So that's actually how we think about it. So it means that everything that we want to do actually is here in this one. So if here we have, first of all, to check in the database if this user already exists, and right now we just concentrate on the identity user. So existing identity equals, and for this one we have can use the user manager, which is the service that Microsoft ASP.NET Core Identity provides to us. And here we'll have this find by email async. That's actually what we want to do. And the email we have in the request dot I guess we just have username, but username is also in email format. So yeah, we can use that, of course. So we also need to await that. Cool. So then we have this existing identity. Now, usually what we do when we check for something in the database is that if it is null, we actually, well, throw an exception or create an error. But in this case, it would actually be the exact other way around, because if we already have that identity in the database, then we can't create it again. Okay, so in this case, it will be the exact other way around. So it would be if existing identity not equals null. So if it is not null, if it happens that we already have that identity, then in that case, we actually have to, let's go once again in this create handler, because here we have, or in the update, I guess it would be something similar to that. Of course, we'll have to actually rewrite it a little bit, but we'll do that. Cool. So first of all, result is error true. That's something that we surely want to set. That's okay. Now, here errors. Let's go into our error codes. I guess we'll make an error code for this kind of how should we call this? User already exists. The codes that I have provided here, well, that's what I normally do in the project, depending on the type of the errors that we might have. We define some ranges, like for instance from 100 to 200 we have errors that regard I don't know, maybe infrastructure. But maybe, you know what, let's do like that. So we keep this not found, we keep this server error, because these are similar to what we have. If we would have several validation errors, should be in the range 100 to 199. Let's do it like that. So then I don't know what type of errors should we consider these. I wouldn't leave this maybe infrastructure. That should be an infrastructure. Should be in the range 200 to 299. So let's make this one to be 201. Okay. So we have this new error code. We can go back here and we have error code. Identity already exists. And here we will also change the message that we provide. No post found with this ID. Provided address already exists. Cannot register new user. Okay. And then we add this error to the errors list and we return the result. So if we have this error, we just want to return. So we really don't want to get any further because yeah, it doesn't really make any sense. Now, if on the other side, the existing identity is null, so we don't have any identity with that specific email address, then we can just create it for identity equals new identity user, okay. And I guess we'll just use an object initializer here. So we need to provide an email, and that would be from request.username. Okay. And username will, well, actually be exactly the same here in this case. Username equals, once again, also request.username. I said I go this way because it's the easiest way to actually obey to this Microsoft ASP.NET Core identity way of doing stuff. Of course, you might want to even change, and the username might be something else than your email address. But in our case, it will be the same. So, okay. So we are good with that. Now, the next thing that we want to do is we want to actually, we want actually to perform here several operations that I actually want to make sure that are performed together. And if one fails, then everything should fail. So okay, I guess let's here var using var transaction equals context. Isn't it begin transaction? It shouldn't be like that. Oh, I don't want to create a method. What do we have on the context? Oh my god. I'm working almost every day with this, and model roles users, okay. Role claims, these are the DB sets that we have: attach, dispose, entity, find, remove, add range, attach, find async. Why don't we have, shouldn't we have this begin transaction on the DB context? Strange. Yeah, I'm just looking on the other screen, controlling var transact context. Ah, it's on the database itself. Okay. Dot begin transaction. Yeah, that's what we wanted. Cool. Okay, so that's okay right now. We are fine with that. Okay, good. So we begin a transaction, and the first thing that we want to do is actually var created user equals, or let's create it I guess we'll name it like this: await user manager dot create async. I don't want to create a security token right now, although we might want to also save the tokens in the database at a certain point, but right now we can just simply use them. And in this create async method, I guess we need to provide the identity and the password. So it would be the identity, and then the password we'll have in the request. It would be something like that. Okay, so this would create the user. So the problem is if this created identity is not successful, and if created identity dot succeeded, then what we want to do is actually once again something similar to what we have done here, but not with the unknown here, something to what we have done here. Let's do that. Now the only thing here is that error code. It's still an infrastructure I guess. So identity user already exists here in the creation failed. So this would be this error code. Okay, so let's go back to the handler and identity creation failed. Create new identity. Okay. I'm curious because I really don't know this by heart. Created identity. We have errors. Okay. Cool. So, and what are those errors? Like the type. It's an identity error. Let's take a look at that. So it's an identity error. Okay, let's see what's the identity error look like. It has a code, okay, and a description. But I still want to use my own codes because these codes are generated by Microsoft ASP.NET Core Identity, but then it has the string description. So what we can do is instead, so new error, okay, and for the message, so our error, it has a string message. Okay, so we'll do this a little bit differently in this case. So in this case, we'll do like this for each. Or what's this actually? It's an create user errors. It's an enumerable. We can't do the link queue for each. So we'll have to do the regular for each here. Okay, so for each var identity error in created identity dot errors. Okay, we actually want to move that there. Okay, now okay, I guess the identity code will be exactly the same. Now the only thing that will be different is the message, because maybe that would help us to actually better understand all the errors that might have, because these errors will ultimately also get as into the response to the requesting client. So if they need to do some debugging or troubleshooting, investigating on their side, then at least they get in the response all the errors that actually happened here when the identity user was created. So in this case, but you notice that actually what happens is that this user manager service, which is actually implemented by Microsoft because it's part of the Microsoft ASP.NET Core Identity, uses the exact same concept that we are using. It just returns us a certain result if it succeeded, and if not, it just returns us a list of errors. It doesn't just throw errors, or it doesn't just throw exceptions. And that's, from my point of view, a very good way of architecting systems, not always throwing errors around. So identity error, but I guess this E should be capitalized. So identity error dot description. Okay. and then we'll return the result. So we are done with that. Cool. So if we go through this if and nothing happens, it means that we already have that the creation of the identity was successful. Okay, question here. I am wondering why you are using 202 when the result has failed. No, the idea is, and maybe that's why, as said, I haven't given very much thought about it. But the idea is that these error codes, they actually should not duplicate or how to say that, should not be a one-to-one mapping to HTTP. These are not HTTP error codes. These are error codes that are specific to our application. They have nothing to do with the HTTP errors. The fact that I have named is not found and server error like that, well, we will have to rethink that. Maybe these are all also infrastructure exceptions, and maybe we'll give also to them IDs here or numbers in this range. But I think I'll just wait a little bit more and just maybe then to see what other type of errors we might have, and then I will probably refactor a little bit the ranges for these codes. But once again, the idea is that these error codes should not have anything to do with HTTP codes. And I know that this is misleading because as I didn't know what to put here, I didn't know what ranges to use. I just put 404 for not found and 500 for server error. But yeah, that's 409 conflict. Where do we have 409 here? We don't have. We have 404, 500, 101, 201, 202, and 999. We don't have that. Once again, these error codes, these are not HTTP error codes. They don't have anything to do with that. These are application level error codes. How these error codes will be translated to HTTP error codes, that's actually for the API layer to think about. So here we are just returning error codes or having such error codes, it makes easier to actually troubleshoot and debug the application where you have some problems. Because when you have a list of known error codes and ranges, it's easier to actually identify maybe where the problem was. But that doesn't have anything to do with the HTTP error codes. As I said, how this ultimately translates to HTTP responses or response codes, that's the concern on the API layer, and maybe we'll revisit that because we have this type of logic in place. But I guess for now we are just treating this one, and we should maybe return then specific responses for each type of, I don't know, maybe these ones. Okay, so yeah, but hopefully I managed to explain myself. So it's misleading that I put this 404 and 500 error codes here. It shouldn't be like that. Okay, good. Let's go back to our handler in that case. And okay, so we have error codes, identity creation failed, and then we have these descriptions, and everything should be okay. Cool. So right now, when we have this, if created identity is succeeded, well, the next thing that we can do here is, but I guess we also will have to refactor this method because it becomes too long. So we'll have to extract this in several other private methods probably. Okay, but let's first finish off what we actually want to do. So if the identity was created, the next step is actually to create our basic info, and then with that basic info, create our user profile. So var, let's call it profile info equals, and here we have this pattern where we expose factories directly on the domain models because all the constructors for our domain models are private. So we'll have this basic info dot create basic info, And to this create basic if info, we'll have to provide a lot of details. Okay, string first name, last name, and everything we have in this request. So request dot first name, request dot last name. What's the next one? Email address. Okay. So we know that request dot, we have this in the username. Let's maybe go on a different line. String phone. Okay. Dot phone. We're okay with that. Then what we have this date of birth. Okay. So request dot date of birth and current city. Okay. And I guess we should be good to go with this. Cool. Okay. Music has stopped playing. I know that you might hate it, but I really want to hear something in the background, so pray for that. And yeah, maybe I got accustomed to this because most of the streamers generally they also use some background music. I know that the background music right now is maybe surely not the best, of course, but yeah, there's also some copyright problems here when using music, and that's some default music that YouTube actually allows me to use. But I look into also other ways and have better music. I promise that. Okay, so right now we have this basic info create, and then what we can do here is we have that var profile equals user profile, and the same here we have this create user profile, and here we have to actually provide, I guess, string identity ID, and that's something that we will have here in this identity. So we'll have identity.id, identity like this, and then the basic info that we just created like that. Okay, what's, I have a typo here, of course. Profile info, still not okay. Still not okay. Let's change this. Okay, now it should be good. So this will create us an instance of user profile. It will also pass through validation and things similar to that. But then these create basic info and create user profile. This might actually throw errors, throw exceptions if the domain validation fails. And for that, let me go to the user profile handlers. Okay, where do we have that? Here, user profile, comment handlers. Because in the create user command, I guess we have all the catches that we have. User profile not valid exception. This is the exception that we can get. So let's just reuse that. Okay, where were we here? So, and that catch should come before this one, because it's a more specific one. Catch. But I have copied the entire block, so yeah. Okay, user profile not found exception. That's a domain level exception that we have, and we just translate it. This is still a validation error, and yeah, we get then all the messages. In all the validation errors, then we add a new error to this result, and yeah, in the end we will just return the result, so we don't have to care about it right here. Okay, so this might throw this exception, so we catch it here. But if it doesn't throw this exception, actually what we need to do here is context, okay, it's ctx in our case, dot user profiles dot add, and we want to add a profile. Okay, then await TTX save changes async, and we have wrapped everything into a transaction. I think the video froze. Okay, let me check. I'm not sure. Here the streaming software service says it's an excellent connection. YouTube is saying the same thing. Restream is also saying the same thing, I guess. Okay, I don't see. I don't get any notifications from the streaming software that I use that there is a connection problem. So please let me know if the problem still persists, or please let me know all others of you if you can still view everything correctly. That would be important. So everywhere it's pointing me that it's an excellent connection. Yeah. So I'm really not sure. Can you? It's the same on Twitch, okay? That's kind of strange. But so you can hear me, but you can't see the screen anymore. So you can just hear my voice and that's it. So everything else is the same. So okay, that's strange. I can hear, but the screen is not changing. Okay. Okay, so another YouTube user says that I'm not having any issues with this. Okay. And if you refresh your browser, because other users are saying that they don't have any issue with that. Yeah. Sergey, so really sorry for that, but I'm not sure if I can fix this issue, because I don't really get any information that something might be wrong, and as other users noted that that it seems to work fine for them, I guess I'll just continue. Okay, so I'll just continue for now, but please let me know if you have any problems, because I said all the softwares that I use right now they don't report anything that I would have connection problems. So I'm really not sure what to do, to be honest. Okay, so let's go back to that one. So okay, we saved these changes. Okay, so that's okay. But we have also wrapped everything into the transaction. So in this case, if everything is okay, then we can also use transaction commit. Commit async. If we have the async version of this, then we'll just do that. So we just await it. Okay, and after the transaction is committed, then the most fun part will come, actually, I guess. Because after the transaction is committed, what we need to do is, well, we need to actually generate this token. And unfortunately, it's not really complicated to do that. But there are really a lot of steps actually involved here. So first of all, we need something what it is called token handler. So we'll have var token handler equals new JWT security token handler. So that's actually what we need as a first thing. Now the other thing that we need is, and here we need also something else. We need the I options of JWT settings. So private read only. In the end, what we'll have here is JW settings, JWT settings. Okay. There probably will also need to add import missing reference. But okay, so here job settings and semicolon, and here we'll also of course need this, but also hopefully this doesn't become too long, so we'll move this on another line. We'll need an I options of JWT settings. Here we'll probably use Microsoft extensions options. That's what we need here. And what to actually get the real JWT settings here in this one, it would be equals JWT settings dot value. Okay, so right now we will also have these JWT settings here. Cool. So let's go then here. Okay. So also David is saying that it's right. It looks like you are on pause. Okay, that's a little bit concerning to me. So if you refresh the browser, it's exactly the same thing. It's still giving me excellent connection everywhere. I'm looking right now on Twitch. I just opened also the stream in YouTube, and actually it's working for me. I'm not sure what the problem is. I'm really not sure where the problem is, but also I'm checking. I'm also on my YouTube channel right now, and it's not frozen at all, so it actually works. Okay, so no changes that I make on code. Okay. Okay then. Yeah, that's correct. That seems to be true. let me, I don't know, let me just try something out. I'll switch one. Okay. Let's see if I have moved around. I have scrolled around in the code. So theoretically, that is what I was doing to really test if that really froze. And actually, right now I try to do something, but it's actually the same. So it seems to still be frozen. That's very, very unfortunate. Let me maybe try something else. Okay. Okay, I'm trying to do stuff here. Okay. Well, in that case, if the problem still persists, I guess I'll just have to maybe stop for now. And yeah, it seems that it still persists. Okay. Let's maybe change to this other one. Or transaction. Maybe add here some comments. Okay. Now it seems nothing that I do will really help. So probably this is a problem with OBS. I never had a stream that long, so I don't know. Maybe it just got tired. So in this case, I guess I'll call it a day for now. And yeah, probably we'll continue to do this to create the token handler then on the next stream, which will most probably be next Tuesday. Because by the way, if you know people, on Monday I will resound the series for ASP.NET Core for absolute beginners. So yeah, if you know somebody or if you know anybody that might be interested in that, just maybe also refer them to this channel. It also starts on 9 p.m. CET. It happened during one of the first videos as well. Okay. I didn't even notice that. Although I remember that there were some comments to that videos, and yeah, now probably I understand them. So yeah, I'll have to take a look into that. Okay. Yeah. Good. So guys, really I appreciate a lot the fact that you stayed for so long, and I'm really sorry that we have to actually stop for today. But yeah, it doesn't really make sense to continue right now. So once again, if you want to support this channel, then please just subscribe to it and make sure that you spread the word. If you think that you have friends, colleagues, or acquaintances that might find this channel useful, then just refer them to this channel. And more than that, if you want to go the extra mile, that super thanks button is still available. So that would also be highly appreciated. And I will make sure that we will continue right from the place that we actually finished off today. and we will go and implement that token generation and things that would have to follow to that. It was a great video today, exactly what I was needed. Thank you very much. I'm really glad that it was helpful for you and that you enjoyed it, and I'm really sorry that unfortunately it had to end like this. I still have to figure out if this is a problem with the streaming software, which is OBS, and or if the problem is elsewhere. But yeah, I guess I'll have to just look at that. And yeah, unfortunately, right now I really not able, or I don't really know exactly how to fix that. But thank you very much for watching for the entire time, especially from so far away. I mean, Sergey, you're from Canada. True, in Canada probably it's midday right now, so or lunch or something like that. So that's cool. But enjoy your day, and once again, thank you very much for watching, for being here, for being active, for writing things into the chat. That was really a very good experience also for me. And take care, stay safe, and see you the next time. So bye.